Hello! Welcome to Ring of Red, Mission 10. We're gonna see some new things, or at least one new thing. Well, first we're gonna skip through this mission introduction thing. Whenever you start a new game, it goes through this as though, I don't know, just as a reminder. But we're not interested in that. We saw it last video. What we're interested is the game tips for what's coming up. Yep, we are going to encounter snow. These guys have kind of a roundabout way of explaining what it does, but in short, it makes longer range combat more difficult. Your base accuracy is lower at medium and especially long range, and your aiming is slower. I assume that it works both ways. The game is actually pretty fair in that weather and other environmental effects tend to have an impact on both sides. Don't get too hung up on tactics when making your decision, right? In a tactics game. I know what they're getting at. They're like, don't make all of your decisions based on whether or not it's good in snow, because, I mean, you don't want to send an AFW into a 4-leg AFW into short range regardless. Anyway, Weizsägger's the same. Ryoko, I gave her the Ink Shrap squad that we got before, and my plan is to load that up if I encounter a really nasty troop composition. There are actually a few with infantry with co-op and medics with smoke shot, which makes getting rid of them in one battle really tough. Kinsato, well, he got E-Wire. And in fact, so did Ryoko. They really needed to prevent anti-AFWs from closing in while we remove their squads. John is pretty much the same, though. And I believe Ayana is as well. Nothing too surprising here. Now, Jun, while I was recording this, I didn't intend to make a change, but I noticed, hey, don't I have another squad with both rapid fire and a shell, like shrapnel? I don't expect to use it a whole lot, but I guess it would be nice to have the option. I certainly wouldn't lose anything from it. There we go. I finally gave Ippei a supply squad with APC instead of APCR. Maybe I'll be able to make better use of that. And Emilio finally has both repair and cleanup. I forget how many missions I went without that particular combination. Kinda surprised I got away with it. Yeah, Karma are not exactly our lackeys. They definitely have their own problems right now. That's a bad reason, Jun. We've already seen how going for revenge works out in this story. Speaking of revenge, Ryoko hasn't said much recently. Oh yeah, snow might indeed reduce the ability to move around on the tactical map. Hadn't thought about that. Well, let's take a look at the situation. On Weisegger's side, because of course we didn't split our teams evenly, they're looking at a pretty tough time. Notice how the enemy is lined up so that if I advance on that foreleg, others will back up behind them and fire over their heads, and this can happen a lot. So I think it's best for them to stay where they are for now to avoid the forelegs piling up on them. Also, they're in fairly good terrain for defending themselves. He thinks it's all his fault, doesn't he? I'm willing to bet on that, even though it isn't spelled out. So, those villages. Those are obviously a big objective for the leftmost team. We can be fairly sure that enemies will show up as we advance towards it, because we've already seen that when we try to take villages. Now, even though I'm having Jun staying in place, it's actually very important to move someone over there as soon as possible. We've already told you it's not a demon, Ryoko. What? Why? Okay, I'm done. She's not gonna learn. I'll just deal next time she says demon AFW. Ugh. So it's tempting to have her advance on the enemy, especially because she can take some hits, but I'm not sure that's prudent because, well, splitting forces even further seems like a bad idea. And yeah, this is the sort of thing that I was talking about. Now that this AFW has made its move, I can follow up and eliminate it without a problem. I mean, true, Weisegger is not exactly a first strike build, but they're at short range. Ending the fight early is no problem. Now, the reason that it's vital to move someone to the lower right, even though it would be easier to just move forward along the road and deal with those three, is that if I leave the enemies to the lower right alone, one of the light AFWs will go and capture those neutral villages, and I lose the squads that were in there. Alright. Given the usual progression about this sort of thing, he isn't going to learn what that important thing is until at least 3/4 of the way through the game. Alright, I want to move Emilio into a place where Ryoko can easily follow up after they attack him, and this seems pretty good. By the way, little thing about checking enemy range. You can sort of guess at what kind of troops they have from their movement. Like, that one can attack along diagonals, so I know they have recon. This one does not. And it's important to check that sort of thing because the enemy having recon or not can kind of take you off guard. Like, you might not expect, say, an anti-AFW to attack along a diagonal or a medium to attack 2 squares away, that sort of thing. Okay, they didn't have to move into the woods. Not quite sure why they did that. But, hey, I'll take that advantage. I considered taking the APC unit because, well, it would be nice to fire an APC shell before punching them. But it really isn't necessary. I kind of put them in the squad so we have an easier time finishing off enemies at night. Now, I've talked a little bit about punching already, especially about its defensive purposes. We've already seen in this very map that medium AFWs can cut off bad matchup early if the fight is at close range. Well, short range technically, but moved into close. And how quick move is the, well, end fight button for anti-AFWs. Like, oh, you thought you were gonna get a turn. Well, I got bad news for you. But I haven't really talked about it as an offensive option. For one thing, even when used defensively, it will take off an enemy shield, especially if it's a medium AFW. And that's really useful for the follow-ups to finish it off. And if the enemy is short or four-leg, especially in the earlier game, it can be like half their health. Ippei especially does not mess around. Even a bit later, when they start to have more health, against, I don't know, a light AFW, you could fire an APC shell and then punch, and that'll do the trick. But you've seen a little bit of me using it with Ryoko, and less than that with Emilio as a tool for just finishing off AFWs. And there are a couple of reasons that's really good. For one thing, especially after the first 2 or 3 missions or so, it pretty much doesn't miss. Ryoko has lower accuracy, but she also doesn't miss because, well, Rapid Punch doesn't miss. And Ippei and Emilio have really good close combat accuracy, so missing isn't a problem for them either. And you've seen battles where someone with good accuracy nonetheless misses most of their shot in the battle and thus can't finish the enemy, so having something reliable is a really good tool. Now, I think it's better to use an APC Shell against a medium AFW, because that alone will probably remove the shield for the earlier models of medium. Against anti-AFWs, it will pretty much never remove the shield, even if it's a heat round. Oh, so expanding on the whole punches are reliable thing, another benefit they have as an offensive tool is that in addition to not missing on their own, they aren't hindered by smoke shot or night conditions, which is really nice, and of course not snow either. There are countermeasures against close combat, but it's pretty easy for the player to plan for them. Just bring cleanup, and that's most of the issue right there. Adding repair as well is nice to fight against E-Wire. And speaking of E-Wire, I want to sidetrack myself and talk a little bit about this matchup. Now, as John, my goal is twofold. First of all, remove the infantry with Ink Trap, of course. Ink Trap is especially dangerous on a light AFW. And that's because light AFWs are the only ones able to fire anti-infantry special shells at close range. You notice how all the other AFW types switch to their machine gun at close? Well, that means that they have to load their shells breach-wise. You've seen it. The animation where the soldiers throw the shell into the gun, whereas with light AFWs they fire it from this sort of, I don't know, grenade pistol sort of thing. That means that if you're facing an AFW that's not light, with a really nasty anti-infantry shell, you can close in on it at short and they won't be able to use it on your infantry. I experimented with this sort of thing a little bit. Anyway, that's one objective. The other is I don't want to let them use E-Wire twice on me because one of John's weaknesses is that none of his squads have repair. And if I get my legs completely broken, John will not be able to move on the tactical map, and I definitely don't want that. So cooperation was used on the enemy infantry, and that combined with creep fire finished them off. And since the enemy likes to pull back that E-Wire for a second use, I also did that with my infantry to recharge cooperation and shoot them when they went forward. Supplies die quickly on the ground, so this strategy is pretty effective. And it's also why you have to be really careful with your own supplies on the ground. In fact, I thought it was kind of odd that they put the supplies on the ground instead of their shooters, because the shooters don't have any special shells, but the supplies have some APC, I think. Maybe the AI is programmed to notice when the enemy doesn't have repair and they have E-wire, so they try this sort of thing. Because without repair, the only way I can get rid of it is using the recover command, and frankly that's a waste. I haven't taken any actual damage with John, and also I'm going to need him to be kind of active, especially in the early part of this map. By the way, you may have noticed that not only am I not fighting the Loyal Army anymore, they're using the really old models of AFW, even though their regular army had better stuff at this point. I'm sure that this was done on purpose, because they have really nasty squad compositions on a lot of them. So that's, I guess, the challenge. Really good squads, but kinda flimsy and low-tech AFWs. I guess it's also their way of easing you into snow battles, though I don't think they're that much extra difficulty. So, back to punching. I've covered most of the reasons why it's useful offensively. There's one or two more things. First of all, there's no setup time required. Unlike normal shots, at least, you don't have to take time setting up for a shot. There's no waiting for your accuracy to go up. It's like a free special shell that's really powerful. And the fact that it ends the battle is more often a benefit than a drawback, as long as you're careful with how you use it. And sort of a hidden benefit is that it allows you to get really good use out of mechanics. Like, if you're gonna be close anyway, you might as well use the most damaging anti-AFW, well, anti-armor squad type in the game at that range. Alright. Even though I had my AFWs mostly stand still, we're still going to deal with some harassment. The good news is that now that this four-leg has moved forward, I can follow up on it without getting piled on, but it does mean that they get the first strike, and it does mean that Cansado is going to take some damage basically for free. Although, they were going to fire that APC Shell no matter what happens. I'd say that 250 health is pretty much the limit of what I'm willing to go into with Cansado. Anything less than that, and it's better to just have him recover. Because who knows how many special shells are going to get thrown at him. So here we have more enemies with ink trap, and they have smoke shot. They seem to love that combination. Seriously, smoke shot and ink trap. There's no getting rid of them. Actually, I wish I had medics with ink trap. I consider loading that onto Kinsado's crew. Yeesh. That way we'd have the troop health recovery and a really nice damaging shell without having to use a maximum attack. Now, here is a weakness in the AI that I'm sure is intentional, which is regardless of what's happening, they always stand still at the start. And if I'm willing to delay moving my troops forward a bit, I can gain a lot of forward distance with that. Or backwards if that's what I want. So this is the strategy that I think I mentioned before, which is when I'm encountering something that's really tough, use spray fire because I wouldn't be able to keep them suppressed long enough to stop them from doing things. Especially when they have smoke shot. I only have one really good shot, or at least only one shot for a good long while, so I might as well make that one shot really good. Also, yes, I'm using 2 maximum attacks because other AFWs might follow up on Kinsado, and obviously I don't want him to get killed. Also, that's pretty much the textbook time to use a dodge, which is when the enemy AFW sets up for a shot and you know it's going to be against you. That is, against your AFW. Because that way I can hold the throttle forward and he gets a couple of extra steps from avoiding their shell. Also, this was a real boon because they decided that moving backwards was more important than moving their medics backwards. As a result, just while I was aiming, their medics were eliminated, which is going to make the follow-up a lot easier. Especially because I don't have any anti-AFWs on this side of the map. I could technically follow up with Weizsäcker at short range, however, both the enemy's movement and just the natural movement of getting pushed back by shells and rockets would put us at medium range pretty quick. Wow. Shooting at AFWs just is not your specialty, is it? I didn't feel like using 2 dodges, though. I didn't really feel like that was justified, and I feel like that was on account of that AFW having horrible base accuracy. I think we talked about that the first time I showed you its stats, but that was most likely a 50% shot at best. I don't think they spent very long aiming. Now the reason I destroyed that shield with 1 shot is because my infantry took a couple of pot shots at the AFW when their troops were hiding. Worked out pretty well. And, well, my recon took some damage, but Kinsado's AFW health is still at 250, which is very good. There should be no problem surviving after that. And that's the end of the video, so I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.